So I woke up the other day and I was making my way to the shower and I stubbed my toe. Then I got out of the shower, I walked upstairs. I live in an upside down house, so the bedrooms are downstairs, probably too much information. And there was a rather official looking letter at my front door. So I opened up the letter and I had a speeding ticket. I'd been caught doing 18 kilometres an hour in a 10 kilometre zone. I mean, how is it even possible to drive at 10 kilometres an hour? Then I made my way down to my office and I got a flat tyre and I was like, oh my, what is going on here? Then eventually I fixed the flat tyre, I put the spare on and I got down to the office and I realised I'd left my keys in the house. And honestly, the rest of the day just seemed to get out of hand from that point onwards. It was kind of like the world was conspiring against me. And it just flipped me into a really shitty and bad mood and I couldn't seem to shake it. I don't know if that you can relate to this in any way, where something bad happens in your world and it just seems to push you into a bad mood and you can't seem to shift it. You know, maybe it lasts for a few hours or potentially even longer. Well, in this video, I want to take a look at what causes our bad moods in our psychology through our thinking and how you can then reverse them. Hi, I'm Stephen Burns from Mind School and I've been a practicing therapist, coach and trainer for around about 22 years. And in this video I want to talk about what causes our bad moods and I also want to share with you just a couple of strategies that you can use to reverse them. So before we begin, if you could consider subscribing to the channel and possibly even hitting that notification bell, that would be absolutely fantastic. It really does help. So let's kick off. What causes our bad moods? Well, it is of course multifactorial. There's lots of different things that can pull us into a bad place emotionally. It can be your biology, your neurology, genetics, of course, they play a part in everything that we do. The amount of sleep that you've had, that's a big one for me. Your diet, nutrition, exercise, you name it, the list goes on and on. But in particular, I want to focus on what we actually have control over, what we can influence, and that is our psychology. What we're doing inside our minds in order to create these bad moods. So in general, there are two main styles of thinking that we can engage in that pull us into a bad place, a bad mood. And often these styles of thinking, we can engage with them subconsciously. So by being aware of them, bringing them more to our conscious awareness, we can actually start to do something about them and that can have a positive effect on our mood. It can lift our spirits. So let's take a look at these two different styles of thinking. So the first style of thinking is what I call extreme negative focus. And this is where something happens in our world that is bad, that's not as good as what we would like it to be, and then we focus in on it so much that it's almost like we can't see anything else. We temporarily stop seeing the good things in our life or the good qualities about ourselves or the future possibilities and potential opportunities, and we just focus in on that one thing. And it can sometimes become so big that that's all we see. It fills up the entirety of the movie screens of our mind. To give you an example, when I was 16, I think, I woke up in the morning, I looked in the mirror and I had a massive pluck on my face. Now, I don't know if pluck is a Scottish word, I think it might be, so just to kind of translate, it means a spot. So I had this massive spot on my face, and honestly, this became the biggest thing in the world. You know what it's like when you're a teenager, all of a sudden, I've got to go to school with this massive crater on my face, this is just going to look ridiculous and everyone's going to laugh. And I became so obsessed with this that it just filled up the entirety of the movie screens of my mind, and that was all I could really think about, and it really flipped me into a bad mood. So that's extreme negative focus. And of course, we don't just do this as teenagers, we do it as adults. Maybe we see something about our appearance and we make it really big inside our mind and it pulls us into a bad mood. Or maybe something happens that we don't like or we're less than satisfied about. Maybe we don't succeed in something we'd like to succeed in. Or maybe our plans go awry, they go off on a tangent and something, just stands in our way, a massive challenge. And all of a sudden, that is all we see. We can't see all the other good things in our life, the good things about our personality, all the potential opportunities. And we become focused in on it and it just flips us into this bad mood. So that is extreme negative focus. How do we actually solve this? Well, there's a few different solutions, but a really simple solution that will give you almost immediate relief is to shrink it down inside your mind. You hear people say things like, oh my God, this is just blown out of proportion, or this problem has grown arms and legs, or it's just a much bigger thing than it needs to be. they're not just talking metaphorically when they use those descriptions, those terms. They're actually, this is a literal description of what is going on in their imagination, in their subjective experience. They've actually made that thing bigger inside their mind in terms of space. So actually what you can do is you can think about the situation that you're focusing in on that's causing you to feel the bad moods, or go into the bad moods, should I say, and just think about, the size of it inside your mind. Usually you've made it a much bigger thing, and then actually shrink it down, shrink the picture of it inside your mind down to something small. And this can give you temporary relief. It just gives you that breathing space, and you can start to see things with a bit of perspective. So to link back to the intro, if I think about the speeding fine, that really did become something big inside my mind. If I was to just shrink the picture of it down inside my mind, all of a sudden I get a bit of, a relief, and I can start to see things a lot more clearly. I start to see things with greater perspective. So that's one very simple solution. A second one, in my opinion, is more powerful. It's fantastic, and that's why I call the end of life strategy. And this is where you just imagine going off to the end of your life. Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, calls this your rocking chair moment, when you're like 120 years old or 90 years old or however old you're going to be, and then you look back to the bad experience that you're currently having, and you look at it over the context of your entire life, all the way from the end of your life. And all of a sudden when you do this, it's kind of like, is it really worth worrying about? The vast majority of the time you just go, you know what? No, it just really is not worth worrying about whatsoever. This is just a tiny blimp on the entirety of time. Or as one of our students recently said, it's the pimple on the arsehole of time, which I think is a great way of expressing it. So this is a great way of just shifting your perspective. And again, what happens is it actually automatically starts to shrink down inside your mind when you think about it over the context of your entire life, from the very end of your life. Very powerful technique. So that is extreme negative focus, and a couple of strategies that you can use to overcome it or to reverse it. So the second style of thinking we can engage in, often subconsciously, that pulls us into a bad mood, is what I call stacking and cycling. So this is where we start to list bad things that have happened to us, or maybe bad things that we believe about our personality, about ourselves, and then eventually we reach a level where we've listed so many different things that we tip over a threshold and it starts to flip us into a bad mood. Then what we can also do is we can start to cycle through them. So we go right back to the first thing and we list them over and over again, we stack them on top of each other, and then we cycle through them. And in general, the more things that we tend to list one after the other, bad things, and then cycle through them, the more that we do that, then the more that we get pulled into this bad mood. So it kind of looks a little bit like this. If I just bring up this slide here. So say for example we have 7 bad things that we've reminded ourselves of. I guess if we go by the introduction that I gave at the start of this video, for me it was stubbing my toe, that was number 1. Number 2 was the speeding fine. Number 3 was the flat tyre. Number 4 was forgetting my keys and having to drive back. And there was a few other things that happened after that. And what I did was I just started to really stack these one on top of the other, and they started to pile down on top of me, way down on me, and I started to cycle through them, and that was what flipped me into a bad mood. I'll give you another example. I love to play golf. If you've watched some of my other videos, then you'll know I'm a big golf fan. Now, if I'm playing golf, if I have just one bad shot, that's not really a big deal. It's not the end of the world. But if I have like 4 or 5 bad shots, one after the other, they start to stack up, and I start to kind of think about them. It doesn't always happen, I have to be aware of it, but I can then like stack all of those bad shots and start to cycle through them, and before I know it, I'm getting myself angry, I'm getting myself wound up, and I end up in a really bad mood for quite a few holes. So that's stacking and cycling, and this, by the way, is why people who moan a lot can end up in bad moods quite frequently. If you think about it, moaning is basically this stacking and cycling process. They're just moaning about lots of different things. Life sucks, and I don't like this, and I don't like that, and then they're cycling through it, and eventually they just end up in a bad mood. So how do you actually reverse that? How do you flip it round? Well, there's a couple of solutions, and I think the first solution is to increase your self-awareness. Like I said, usually we get pulled into bad moods subconsciously. We're engaging in these thinking styles without even realizing it at the conscious level. So actually, if you become aware that you're doing it, you can then actually put a stop to it. You can halt it, or you can take it in a different direction. So you can actually appreciate that, sure, there's a few bad things that have happened here that I'm choosing to focus on in this moment, but there's lots of good things in between it too. So you can actually start to take a step back, look at it in a much more objective way, and you can actually get some perspective. So self-awareness is really key. Become aware that you're stacking and cycling, and then just take a look at it from a more neutral and objective place and go, okay, is this really an entire depiction of what's going on, or am I really just focusing on the negative here? And that can really make a big difference. The second thing is actually you can do it in the opposite way. So you can actually stack and cycle to create a positive mood. So instead of listing negative thing after negative thing after negative thing, you can actually stack positive thing after positive thing after positive thing. So if we go back to our slide here, all of those things on the list from 1 to 7, you can actually list 7 things that are absolutely amazing about you and your life currently. And you can list them one after the other, and you can remind yourself of them in your imagination. And then you can even cycle through them. You could spend 20 or 30 minutes just going through this exercise and just cycling through all the amazing things in your life one after the other, really reliving them in your imagination. And then eventually, after about 15-20 minutes, or maybe even less than that, you'll start to actually feel like you're in a really, really good mood. I love doing that. I think it's a really clever but simple technique. So that is stacking and cycling and extreme negative focus, 2 styles of thinking that we can often engage in, and we usually do this subconsciously, that can actually pull us into a bad mood, and also some strategies that you can use to flip it round. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. What did you think? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one. If there's any other strategies that you have for recognizing your own bad moods and then getting out of them, then I'd love to hear those in the comments too. So that's all for me for this video, and of course, if you haven't already, if you could subscribe to the channel, that would be absolutely fantastic. And give this a go. The next time you find yourself in a bad mood, see if you are engaging in one or both of these styles of thinking. So that's all for me. Have a great week, and I'll see you later on.